What is up, everyone? Welcome back to our lawn and welcome to the year in review on no longer just the putting green, but the practice facility here in my backyard. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to bring you up to today on the history of what I've done. We're going to talk through the mistakes of 2021. We're going to talk about my plan into 2022, and then I'm going to answer some questions that I fielded in a community post. So let's get into it. I want to start up in the fairway. So this is all bent grass over here too. This all has been always. This has never been overseeded. This was just scalped late in 2020 down to its current height, scalped even a little bit further in the beginning of 2021. And then this is where it landed. And I mentioned this a little bit as I walk back into the fairway section. This isn't top dressed, this isn't smooth, this isn't leveled. This was existing ground, existing soil, never had any sand put to it, never had anything. And we were able to take it from just weeds and really thin grass back here in the shade to what it is now, which was throughout the year a fairly usable chipping area. Now the fairway was not without fault or issue. This section right here was the biggest loser through the summer drought when I wasn't able to keep up the watering that I needed to. This all died off and never quite came back, and that fought a losing battle with a mini excavator. Then behind me is the section of basically past these trees. So these trees here, if you draw a line between the two of them, I have never in my time here at this house treated from here back. So it was shady and it was all weeds and it was very thin in the beginning of the year. So we'll go back in time and look there to have a little conversation about creeping grass types, and if you're a little patient, what you can expect. So in through here, I actually have this shot from about the same time last year. So we can go back to that and you can take a look. For one, it was mowed taller, so it'd be a little bit more consistent to what you're seeing over there. But this was basically ground covered by weeds, and you can see what came in is this Kentucky bluegrass, and it's starting to fill in. It's not thick. No one's going to call anything over here thick by any stretch of the imagination, but going from, you know, dirt and the odd grass plant here and there to what we ended up getting to, and even if we come back to the bent grass and what it did, this has never looked like this, but it got really thick, really good. Really pleased with how this went. But that's enough of the fairway. Let's talk now about what we've done in the putting green, what we did wrong, what you can learn, and what our plan is, and we'll get to some questions. So behind me, we'll take you all the way back, and I'll even show you a little bit of some of this area over here. Before I knew what was going on, before I knew what I had was bent grass and why that was causing me problems, and you can see it with the older footage, this would always die out over the summer. It'd always be terrible. Finally figured out I had bent grass, decided to work with it instead of fighting against it, scalped this down July 1st, 2020. At the time, I had a Great States manual reel mower, and we got it to a 1/2 inch. And then what the reel mower says is 3/8 of an inch, but it's not. It's the 1/2 inch or maybe even a little taller. In 2020, I top dressed it 4 times throughout the year. About halfway through the summer into the fall, picked up a McLean manual reel mower and managed it at 3/8 of an inch. And it was going very well. And I was starting to get an understanding that, you know, maybe this isn't as hard as everybody makes it out to be, and everyone can do this. Anyone can do this. And so then at the end of the year, end of 2020, I picked up the Jacobson, mowed 1 time December 10th to bring the green down to 1/4 of an inch. And that was it for 2020. 2021 we pick up, I now have the Jacobson. I'm continuing to take the height down. I pick up a Toro 11 blade Greensmaster. Proceed to take the height down to 1/8 of an inch. Late May, the green was looking amazing. I was walking on top of the earth. You know, I wasn't doing anything really different to manage the green than I was the rest of my yard, and I was gonna have a beautiful putting green without doing anything special, without it being the most complicated thing in the world, and on, things were great. And then reality, the fact that I'm an untrained homeowner, set in. And not only that, but a homeowner with other projects. I did the landscaping out front. I prepared for the walkway. I did the last phase of the renovation out front. And all those resources were pulled from my time, desire, ability to manage the green, and things went sideways. I flipped to a liquid disease preventative right as my sprayer broke. They had to wait on a pump from wherever and supply chain issues. So I missed disease applications. I missed PGR applications. I wasn't watering because I didn't necessarily have time to get out here with a sprinkler, and I lost a ton of the green. Fast forward, I decide I'm going to verticut. We're going to renovate. We're going to seed. We're going to do all that. It's going to come back. It's going to be fantastic. Great. It's going to be with Pencross. It's going to be a cheap grass. Beautiful. It all came in. It was looking incredible. My impatient moron self, decided I was going to go right back to 1/8 of an inch. Well, the worms had all come in, it was all bumpy, scalped a bunch of it off, and we were right back to where we started. Now, through the end of the year, I was fertilizing more often, I was watering more often, it was starting to recover, it was looking okay, but at the end of the day, not very good. So we learned we need to be a little bit more attentive to watering, we need to be a little bit more attentive to disease preventative, and we need to be a little bit more attentive to the plant growth regulator, which I'll address a little bit more when it comes to answering questions, because some people had questions about that. So, what's the plan? Well, I am going to, from now on, really bring in true golf course management practices. So at minimum, I'm going to be top dressing once a month, lightly. I'd like to get to every other week if I can. And again, that's going to be really light. We're just throwing a little bit of sand on there, deal with thatch, try to deal with drainage, disease issues, all the things that top dressing manage. And we're going to stay on top of watering. They suggest even in the hottest parts of the year with bent grass, the equivalent of 2 to 3/10 of an inch per day. And some research shows that it's better if you do that every other day. So that's going to be the plan. We're going to put down about 3/4 of an inch of water every other day unless it's raining. And then we'll keep a closer eye on it because things really turn quickly. What I've learned with the green versus the rest of the yard is when things go wrong, they go wrong quickly. You know, with this, it pretty much didn't rain in November. You know, I water here and there. You get a week or two of runway before it really goes sideways on you. The green, you get a couple days and then it's gone. That's an exaggeration, but it's a shorter window of time. This, I don't think, was cut in November. It's currently December 4th. So this hasn't been cut in forever. It really wasn't growing. I had a whole location here for a long time. So the wear and tear, we lost a little circle around that. And then the bottom of this, I think maybe when you get into a little bit more shaded, heavily shaded areas back here, this has always struggled. Also, it's on the downhill side, so you're getting more of the worm castings washing in here, crowding everything out, and various other issues. So 2022, this is going to be, once the soil temperatures get up about 55, 60 degrees, we're going to do a full, I don't think I'm going to kill it, but we're going to do a renovation, bringing in a bunch of sand, top dress everything, get it all covered, get it all flat, get all of the area back out there ready for seeding to expand out the fairway section. And it's going to be 007 and flagstick. And I originally thought I was just going to do 007, but then I was perusing around some websites, doing a little bit of research, and I found that Aaron Hills, host of the 2019-2020 US Open, about 40 minutes from my house, renovating with a combination of 007 and flagstick. And you better believe if I get the opportunity to match a $500 per 18 golf course and have the same type of grass in my backyard, they hosted the US Open, I'm going to be telling everybody about that. Unsolicited strangers in the grocery store, hey, you know what? I got a putting green in my backyard. It's the same grass as Aaron Hills. So that's what we're doing. That's where we are. Again, I still hold to the idea that, especially if you're going to stay north of a 1/4 inch, around 3/8 of an inch, and manage at that type of a height, it's a usable place for you and your family to spend time. Even though we had struggles here, my son and I spent hours out here, neighbors, you know, and then my daughter and wife were out here. We spent, my dad, friends at parties, everything. It's a fantastic thing to have. And even at a little bit taller mower height, it's still usable and it's still something that you and your family, friends can play on, have a good time with. And if you're staying a little bit taller, it's not really that difficult still. I still hold to that. When it gets tough is when you get down to true greens height, 1/8 of an inch and below. So with that, it's time to get into the questions that you all had, and we'll answer those down in Basement Studios. All right, so as promised, we are down here in Basement Studios, and I'm going to go over some of the questions that you all asked on the community post. And I want to start this by saying I'm not a trained professional. I'm not a golf course superintendent. These are my experiences, what I have read, what I have learned, and communicating that the best that I can to you. So please understand that as I talk here, it's as likely that I'm incorrect as it is that I'm correct. So just understand that. I'll do my best to convey my experience, my understanding, but take it as you should. So the first question we have is from Daniel, who asked, how fast is it? Have you considered making a stimp meter? I have not considered making a stimp meter. I've looked at it. There's angles in the iron that matter. There's angles in, you know, the length and how everything works, that it's not going to be a perfect replication anyway. And if I'm honest, I don't really care how fast it is. If I had to guess, it's probably about a 7 or 8 on the stimp meter, something like that. It's not, probably like 8. It's not fast, but it's not slow either. So it's fast enough to be useful and feel realistic. Then goes on to, what about undulations? Do they affect or cause scalping if you're not moving earth just going with the land. So I talked about this in my kind of everything you need to know about a backyard putting green video, and it's about site selection. So the site selection is important in that you want to realistically find the flattest part of your yard that you can. Now, there's considerations given to where you have room and how that's going to work. But wherever you have room, pick the flattest place that you can. Mine's on the side of a hill, and it kind of gives me some problems where it's just super speedy. It's super quick downhill, and all the putts are really across hill, really breaking, bendy, and then it's pretty slow back up the hill. With respect to undulations, I know Ozzy in his backyard putting green that he has, he's talked about there are places where he has little valleys. And with his Greensmaster, he'll get scalp lines along the edge of the mower where, you know, it's sitting on the edge of a ridge and you have that flat surface right on the edge of that ridge there, and it can kind of cut and dig in. So if you have like really big undulations like that, you might fight those a little bit at the low heights of cut. And you're going to need to do some top dressing if you really want to get down to, say, 3/8 of an inch or lower. You're going to have to do some top dressing to get it smooth enough to be able to use these mowers on those surfaces. In my experience, it's a pretty smooth place. It's just on the side of a hill for me. So I would say pick as flat of a place as you can and then top dress to get it as smooth as you can. Then getting on to M. McCabe, do you sharpen your own reel blades on the Toro and Jacobson, or do you take them somewhere? If DIY, what is your backlapping process? I have not yet backlapped either of the Greens mowers. I did backlap the McLean with limited success. I basically just go to the manufacturer's website and find the nearest dealer. Now, that's probably not the cheapest way to go about it. In fact, it's probably by a few factors the most expensive way to go about it, but it's what I've done. I found a Jacobson dealer down in Chicago. It's about 50 minutes from my house. And I believe Reinders, which is the landscape supplier that I use, is a Toro dealer and will do the maintenance on the Greensmaster. And that's my plan going forward. Then D. Landis 14 asked, weed treatment of the green and top dressing recommendations. How often to do it? Straight sand soil combo, seeding bent grass into an existing rye, KBG lawn versus killing it off and starting over. So let's start with the weed side. At the sections of my yard that I cut at 4/10 of an inch, there's still weed pressure in there. And if you do have bent grass, you need, let's say, a 3 or 4-way herbicide that definitely doesn't have quinclorac in it. And there might be a couple other active ingredients that are not going to be okay for bent grass if you're trying to grow that specifically. So just, again, be very careful when you're looking at herbicides to buy them to treat any weed issues that you might have, that the label explicitly says that it's safe to use on bent grass. On the green itself, where I'm mowing at 1/8 of an inch, I have no weed problems there. I've even seen weed, like with little broadleaf weed plants, germinate and they just die off right away. They're not built, they're not designed to maintain at that height. So realistically, cutting that short, you're not going to have a weed problem there. Then top dressing. Top dressing is going to depend on your budget, your not only of money, but of your time. So it's a fair bit of time and effort. And granted, you're doing a small area, so it might only be a half hour to an hour to throw sand and get it kind of raked in and leveled out. So not a huge time commitment, but still it's a half hour and an hour. And sand isn't free. So it's going to cost you some money. In starting out, you're going to have to do it at least a couple times just because the natural lay of your backyard is not going to be smooth enough to have a functioning putting green. So you're going to have to top dress a couple times just to get the surface usable. After that, top dressing, I didn't really top dress at all in 2021 and it was fine. Now, with that said, actual cultural practices for putting greens involve a light top dressing much more often. You're managing playing surface, drainage, you're managing the quality of the surface and playability. It's a way of dealing with any potential thatch buildup. Me personally, I didn't have any of those problems because my grass never got thick on the putting green, so none of that was ever an issue. So the lack of top dressing wasn't really, it didn't cause me any problems, but I also didn't solve any problems by not doing it either. So it kind of depends. You're going to need to do a little bit over probably 2, 3, 4 times to get it smooth enough to work. And then after that, it's just as best as you can, doing really lightly to manage, disease, water retention, drainage, thatch, all the things that top dressing does beneficially for putting greens. In terms of what you should do do you kill off? Do you leave the existing cool season grass? Do you overseed? Do you kill and renovate? That's going to be up to what your goal is. So are you just trying to cut an area of your yard short and see what happens? Well, I wouldn't recommend doing anything. Just take a section of your yard and start cutting it short and see what happens. If you want to bring in some bent grass and overseed, I think that would be beneficial. I would start with just your Amazon pen cross, start cheap and just see where it takes you, and then decide maybe later if you want to go a much more expensive route with a higher end cultivar. If you want to target something ludicrous, like I myself am doing, then probably the best option is to completely kill everything off and renovate it and plant a nicer cultivar of bent grass and just go about it that way. Also, when we're talking about bent grass, these are the northern parts of our earth. So if you're in warmer climates, you're going to want to probably steer towards Bermuda and manage Bermuda. And in order to get something that you can cut this short, you probably need to go find sod somewhere. I don't think common Bermuda is gonna last at putting green height. Then Tree Snake TV, great name by the way, asked watering frequency of the green versus the fairway, separate zones more often. So I'll stop there because that's the first part of the question. I didn't water enough. That was the biggest mistake I made. So recommendations that I've found for alpha specifically, and then I'm kind of working my way through a turf grass management book that includes sport turf and golf turf in there. And as I learn from that, I'll continue to communicate that to you. But what I have found is basically you're watering every other day. And you're looking for, and it's more complicated than that. You know, ideally you're going to watch and kind of visually see and physically feel whether or not you need to be watering or not. But in simplest terms, they're recommending watering every other day and getting the equivalent of like 0.2 to 0.3 of an inch of water a day. So let's say maybe every other day you're going to put down 1/3 of an inch of water. And try to target something like that is kind of the generic recommendation. Now, ideally, and for the sake of, you know, resource management and being responsible with watering, ideally you're just paying more attention just because, like I said, when I was outside, everything turns more quickly. So once you're starting to notice that everything's getting dry, that you're starting to see it get stressed out a little bit by heat and lack of water, you need to get on it right away and get some water down. That's also going to depend as well, because I think those recommendations for watering more often are assuming that you're growing a green at a golf course that's been built with, you know, a USGA mostly sand base, whereas we're doing it in our clay loams or whatever soil you have at your house that probably holds water a little bit better. So just really watch for it and be as proactive as you can be to make sure that you're getting water down regularly enough that the plant can stay healthy and doesn't ever decide to check out because of drought and heat. PGR use for maintaining height of cut, and how many times are you mowing a week? How long per week do you spend mowing and maintaining? So this is a great question. So PGR, yes, I dabbled in it a little bit this year. Tried to do it regularly, but missed a couple application windows. It makes a big difference. It makes like a 30-40% difference based on, you know, I let the fairway grow for a while without being under regulation. I let the green grow under regulation, and it grew about 7/8 of an inch over the course of a week that I was gone, versus the fairway that grew like 1.5 inches. So you're talking about maybe as much as a 50% reduction in clippings. And there are some studies out there that you can go look and see on like verified data how much sort of clipping reduction you're having and growth reduction on your shortcut turf. I don't know how much impact PGR has on longer turf, but I know the shorter the grass, the more impact PGR has. Definitely, I would recommend continuing to do that. Mowing, I will try to mow every day. And usually I will land it every other day. So I target every day. I try when I can to mow every day. Otherwise, I make sure I do it every other day. And that's not to say that if you don't mow every other day, you're going to fail. But it's just as often as you're able to mow, the better you're going to be. Like I said, I had a week go by where it grew up to like 1 inch, cut it back down, and it was fine. Just you can't do that all the time, but once in a while you'll be okay. And then how much time am I spending maintaining? So basically from when I leave the door, my back door, until I walk back in the back door, if I'm just cutting, it's about 10 minutes. So 10 minutes to walk out there, get into the garage, get the garage doors open, go rake off the worm castings, drive the mower down to the green, cut the green, drive it back up, put everything away, walk back inside. It's about 10 minutes a day. Then you get into the more time events, you know, if you're going to aerate, if you're going to top dress, if you're going to fertilize, you know, each one of those things adds a little bit more time. Maybe it takes, you know, 5-10 minutes again to fertilize. Maybe it takes an hour or two to top dress, maybe an hour or two over the course of a couple days to manually aerate and do those types of things. So day in and day out, it's about 10 minutes. And then if you're going to do any of the more involved projects, figure, you know, a couple hours on a 500 square foot green will be perfectly fine. So it's not an egregious amount of time. Figure maybe an hour a week. And then a few more a few other people had questions that kind of revolved around the same type of idea. Somebody did ask that I go hit a couple flop shots into the green, so I missed the green with all of them, but I hit flop shots. So yeah, again, I'm going to be spending most of this winter learning everything I can about, you know, managing actual golf course turf and how best to go about doing that. And I'm going to try to be all in next year and have the nicest possible green and practice facility in my backyard as I can. Now, how nice is that? I don't know, because I'm not going to be able to manage it like a golf course because I am a person with a full-time job and a family and all these other things. So I'm going to be targeting perfect, and then seeing where I land and seeing the impact of where I land has on the performance of the green. And then we'll also be able to compare that to this last year where I did more a even worse type of management, where I really kind of just managed it like I managed the rest of my backyard, just mowed it more often. And so we're going to really see the difference in performance between that kind of strategy versus, you know, trying to go all the way in, you know, top dressing more often, watering more often, fertilizing correctly, verticutting, doing all of those things as best as I can, mowing as often as I can, and we're going to see where we land. So I'm going to try to bring you along and be as helpful as I can in all of this process. Again, let any questions that I didn't touch on that you want me to address, I'll do my best to do that in the comment section. Again, I'm not a professional or an expert. I'm just doing the best I can to learn and convey my experience and whatever knowledge I am able to obtain onto all of you. So just again, you know, this kind of wraps up the year in review series where I went through all the parts of my yard and what I've been doing, kind of earmark the progress that we have here ramping up 2021. I thank you all so much for watching the content. I really do hope it's at least to some degree beneficial to you or entertaining or whatever. So thank you so much for watching. Again, leave your questions, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.